Hello and welcome to the Actual Tech Media audience. Thank you so much for joining us on the webinar today. The topic of today's event is digital transformation in the cloud, a technology perspective with Quantexa and Google Cloud. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got a great discussion lined up for you today. Before we get started, there's just a few things that you should know about today's event. First off, I should mention my name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'll be serving as the host and moderator. As always, we want these events to be educational, and we encourage your questions there in the questions pane of your audience console. We've also got some excellent resources there in the handouts tab. I encourage you to check out, specifically a new trail map that's just been released that highlights the joint solution between Quantexa and Google Cloud. We encourage you to download that now. It will be there the entire event, so make sure you check it out. We also, at the end of the event, will be announcing the winner of our Visa $300 gift card prize. If you're watching this on demand, of course, the drawing has already occurred, and the prize terms and conditions can be found there in the handouts tab as well. All right, so with that, I'm excited now to welcome today's two expert presenters. Welcome to Ulku Rowe, who is the engineering director in the office of the CTO at Google Cloud. Welcome, Ulku. Thank you for being here.
Great to be here. Thanks, David.
And welcome to Jamie Hutton, who is the CTO at Quantexa. Great to have you, Jamie.
Thanks, David. Great to be here too.
Awesome. Well, before we get started, there's just a few things here I want to talk about to set the stage. We've got some really fascinating statistics I want to share with you, and I hope that these help to kind of highlight the importance of today's topic. The first one is that according to IDC, 40% of all technology spending is going to digital transformation. So, I mean, we're talking about all technology spent at enterprise companies, businesses today. 40% of that is being directed to digital transformation. That's a huge chunk of all technology spending. Another one, this one according to a survey with MicroStrategy, is that 94% of enterprises say that data is essential to their business growth. So, whatever the analogy you want to use, everyone's talking about data is the gold, the new oil, of the business. It's just so critical to companies today. And 94% of companies out there agree that it's essential to their growth. And then third and last statistic here, and that is that 63% of companies can't gather insights from big data. And this is according to Sigma Computing. So some really fascinating statistics. I hope to keep those in your mind as we talk about today's topic. And with that, let's go ahead and kick off our conversation here. Jamie, first question I wanted to ask you is, what is a data decision gap and how does it affect C-level decision makers? What's your take on that?
Yeah, thanks, David. And obviously, really interesting statistics there. Everyone, I guess, is aware of how much data has been growing over, the last decade and more. In fact, we hear that, storage at enterprises is growing around 30% per year, year on year. It's a huge amount of data. But the biggest challenge that people seem to be facing is making actual good use of that data. And our experience is often that data is languishing in silos. Lots of people over the years have invested in, data lakes or central storage areas where they can bring the data into one place. But unfortunately, just storing that data in a central place doesn't actually integrate it and doesn't make it meaningful. And as such, organizations really struggle to trust the data that they have to support their strategic and operational decisions. And we call that the decision gap. And it's choking the value out of enterprise data assets. We've actually got some sort of statistics of our own, I suppose. So if I bring up this slide, when we talk about the C-suite, we recently interviewed and surveyed 750 IT and data decision makers across the world. And we got some really interesting findings that I thought I would sort of flash up, really. The first one, I guess, is sort of the most important. It goes very much back to one of your statistics, which is 1 in every 2 strategic and operational decisions does not take full advantage of the organization's data. That's a really important statistic. 1 in every 2 decisions essentially could be a better decision if they had full access to the data. We then asked, and whereabouts are these decision gap challenges being felt most acutely? And what was really interesting was that there wasn't just one specific area of the business that was suffering with this. It really was spread across lots of different areas, right from customer opportunities or retention of customers at 44%, right through to regulatory and compliance use cases at 47%. So this is not just an issue that affects one small area of an enterprise. It really is cross-cutting across all different areas. We also, furthermore, found that it was very much a cross-sector problem. The issue was most felt within government, where I think 50% or so found that this was a major issue for them, the data decision gap, followed by banking and then insurance. So this data decision gap is a real problem for a lot of enterprises.
Absolutely, yeah, a huge problem. I want to go over now to you, Ilku, and ask you when it comes to leveraging Google Cloud for transformation. Can you tell us about some of the benefits?
Of course. I think I've been at Google for about 5.5 years now. And especially recently, in the last couple of years, there are 2 questions that I get the most often from our clients in the financial services industry. Number one is, how do I become, more scalable, resilient, and secure? As obviously, as it demands on the digital transformation, as you rightly pointed out, all the businesses are moving into digital, and there's a lot of competition from, some of the fintechs and some of the non-traditional players in the market as well. It's becoming a very much digital business. How do you grow that business in this digital area with the security, the scalability, and the resilience? That's number one. And number 2 is, how do I do this really fast? How do I become agile in doing this? How do I go from an idea to a production really fast? And I think most importantly, what Jamie has pointed out, how do I close that data gap really fast? How do I take all this data that's proliferated across the organization, sitting in silos elsewhere, and how do I now make sense of this data to make critical business decisions for my business, for my customers, for my organization as a whole? So at Google Cloud, we focused on a few things to help our customers along this journey. How do I attack this digital transformation problem? Is one, how do I work with them to really embed the DevOps principles to make sure that they are fast across the spectrum. We work with them to make sure that they are scalable and resilient. And we work with them to create, these what we call a data cloud, so that they have a unified and integrated environment where, it spans across both the storage of data, the databases themselves, then the analytics on top of those databases, and finally, AI and ML capabilities on those databases, so that our customers can have the tools that are necessary to get them to that digital transformation.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for detailing that. So many benefits to using Google Cloud. Jamie, I want to go over to you and ask you about this term, contextual insight. What is it, and why is it so important when it comes to driving better decision intelligence?
Yeah, great question. I mean, contextual insight, or what we call it, contextual decision intelligence, is all about driving more value from data. It's as simple as that, and it really goes back to Orku's point that she's just been making. The first step in the process, from our perspective, is to unify the data into a single view. We've talked about those challenges with data silos. The first obvious type of single view that you would want is a single view of your customer. Who is your customer? And you want to understand all of their touch points across the entire enterprise to be able to understand who they are, what they're doing, and what products you should be offering them, whether they pose any risk, etc. But moreover, you want to be able to do that not just on your internal data, but also on external data. And what I'm going to do is bring this to life with just an example. If you take a look at this is Jamie Hutton. Imagine he was your customer. Would you be able to quickly and easily identify that Jamie Hutton was a CTO of Quantexa on the right-hand side, a company? Are those two the same person? If you can't answer that very simple question, then how can you make a very good decision about what you want to do with Jamie Hutton. Is he a good customer that you want to target more products at? Is he a customer that's perhaps high risk that you want to, remediate in some way? That's a really important question. And unless you can bring this and have a single view across, as I say, both internal and external data, that's a bit of a challenge. And the process that we use to achieve this is something we call entity resolution. This allows you to unify data by understanding where the same thing is being referenced across multiple data sources. So for example, you've got a Jamie Hutton on one side and a James Hutton on the other. Are they the same person? And if so, let's treat them as such and use that full view of their data. But entities go much more beyond just people. That could be businesses, addresses, devices, and many other things. Anything that's a real world thing within the data, you want to unify it so that you have a full understanding of that thing within the context of the data. But actually, contextual decision intelligence goes beyond that. It understands not just who your customer is, but who they relate to. And we call this network analysis, and it allows you to uncover those hidden relationships and uncover things which allow you to understand things like connections within your data. Let's take a few examples of this. Imagine if you wanted to understand who your customer's customer were. That means their supply chain. That's a really important use case for many emerging propositions, including things like ESG, but of course all the traditional ones like risk and financial crime. So contextual decision intelligence ultimately gives you a unified view across all of your data and allows you to close the data decision gap and make better, more accurate and faster business decisions.
Fascinating. I mean, and so Jamie, I'm curious, I love this idea of entity resolution. Can you tell us about some customers who have leveraged this to really maximize the value of their data?
Yeah, and I guess one of the really key things here is that it's such a ubiquitous problem. Every customer that you speak to will have a challenge around really getting a good single client view. And I guess what Quantexa has done over a number of different customers is use that single customer view for many things. Now, that could be a very simple thing, initial thing like a customer 360 view. Think of it like master data management, right through to what I might call a more vertical or more use case driven activity, something like solving a regulatory or compliance or fraud issue. So if you take a look at the slide that I'm just going to bring up, the first example here was a large banking institution that had grown many years by acquiring other organizations, and they had tried to integrate those other organizations into their wider ecosystem bank. They had what they thought was 95 million customer records across multiple different systems and products. When Quantexa was brought in, we provided that single view, and it ended up being deduplicated down to 60 million real-world individuals. That's a huge reduction. That's a third less customers than they thought they had. You've actually got a third less real-world individuals. Now, clearly that makes a massive impact on the decisions a business makes, and not only that, the service that the customer receives. Another really interesting joint client of Quantexa and Google is OFX, who is an Australian foreign exchange and payments company servicing around 1 million customers over 190 countries. Quantexa, Google, and OFX combined to deploy a leading financial crime detection and investigation capability. And the system created a 360 contextual view of customer and also enriched that view with transactional data and external data. This gave a complete picture of the network of those customers and allowed hidden connections and risks to be revealed.
That's amazing. Really impressive. Thank you, Jamie. Over to you, Oko. I want to know the same question. What customer perspectives can you share with us?
Absolutely, David. I think Jamie touched on a very important one, the customer 360. When you think about the financial services sector, it's all about, serving people. And those touch points happen across, many spectrums. They happen in the branches, they happen in the online apps, they happen in the call centers. But, a lot of those experiences also don't come together to understand that customer. What transactions have they done? What was their history? What was happening? Maybe, in the locations that these customers are at, even just joining it with other information, as Jamie said. Because ultimately, if we're in the business of serving our customers, understanding those customers is super important. Understanding what's happening around those customers are super important. And understanding the needs of the customer. So the products that you build, it's not about just making the experience itself better, but also the products themselves better, to see if they're helping the kinds of communities we're trying to help, if we're reaching the right people, are they getting what they want out of their, the financial institutions. So I think that's definitely one area that our customers are deeply, concerned about and invest heavily in. The other element is obviously in the reporting, regulatory, and compliance space. You have all these transactions that happens, serving millions and sometimes billions of people across the globe, and you want to make sure that you're doing the right thing, and then your businesses have a holistic view of the kinds of transactions that are happening across the globe. So this, risk reporting, understanding, the positions that you take, and being able to report them appropriately is important. And I think, it used to be that a lot of these, the reports, or kind of the compliance aspects of it, used to be a rules-driven approach. And now it's all about, like, how can I get, notifications about these so I don't have to do those? As the problems and the bad actors, they're evolving. So you want your systems to be able to create that insight for you without you having to code and explicitly, ask for the solutions. So I think as we look at these, some of our customers, it used to be that the operational data stores and your analytics data stores used to be these complete two things. They're different. There's a wall between them. Sometimes you send the data over from one to the other. So, in our tooling at Google Cloud, we try to make sure that we create a unified platform. So if you're like using something like a big query to do your analytics, then you can federate your queries back into your operational stores, like Spanner or Cloud SQL, so that you can run those without having to carry the data over and copy them across your platforms. Just getting all this information together, whether it's understanding your customers, whether it's doing reporting, whether it's doing product development, and whether it is protecting both your customers and the institution against the bad actors, whether that's combating money laundering, whether that's fraud or cybersecurity. All of that data needs to come together so you have a holistic view of what's happening inside your institution and around your institution.
Absolutely, yeah. Companies desperately need that holistic view, that unified, visibility into their data. Jamie, I'm curious, you talked about the 360-degree customer view. Can you share with us in a little bit more detail and connect the dots? How do you get these disparate data sources and offer this 360-degree customer view?
Yeah, absolutely, David. I mean, we obviously talked a little bit earlier about this process of entity resolution, and that is ultimately one of the key tools to unifying data sources. I mean, these traditional data sources are often not designed to be joined together. There's no really nice key to connect them, and actually entity resolution is the solution to that problem. But I'm actually going to sort of draw on a slight challenge with this idea of a single client view. And that really is honestly that there's no such thing as a single customer view. And I want to explain why that is, because that may almost sound counterintuitive to what I said earlier. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're an organization, perhaps a bank, for example, wishing to produce an operational view of client. So this is your operational view of client. This is, if you've got a Jamie Hutton and a James Hutton, and you say they're the same person, you are going to treat them as one customer going forward. Now that means that you really will have zero false positive tolerance. You're not going to accept overlinking, because if I accidentally get this wrong, I accidentally send Jamie's information to the wrong Jamie, that's a major problem. So when I think about master data management or operational view of client, we have to be extremely strict. We have to ensure that that entity resolution process is tight and it doesn't have false positives. But let me flip that now completely on its head. Imagine the head of compliance or someone from the financial crime team asks for a single view of client. Well, what they're going to be doing is they're looking for the opposite end of the spectrum. They're looking for the needle in the haystack. They are looking for those customers who are trying to evade detection. And so essentially, they are trying to optimize for a completely different problem. They'll want to cast the net wider. They'll want to dial up the fuzziness as they do their entity resolution and their matching, because the pain of missing something in financial crime is high. So this idea that you can have a single view that is used across all use cases across the enterprise just isn't really true. So the way Quantexa has architected the system is essentially you can have different views of your customers. You can have a view that is designed for your master data management and operational view. You can have one for your credit risk, one for your customer intelligence, and one for your financial crime, all with different requirements around how fuzzy, how strict you go on the matching, but also which data sources are being leveraged in that process. So it's a pretty complex area, but ultimately what this gives you is a full 360 view that can be used by any department across the entire enterprise.
Wow, that's fascinating. Ilko, what about when it comes to considering customer transformations? Are they hybrid or are they truly going fully cloud?
Great question. And I think like there's not one answer to that question. I think it, depends on the customer. Like if you're a startup today, you're probably going to go fully cloud, right? No one's going to invest in, buying space in a data center or, trying to rack up your own servers. But the reality is, I think, a lot of the financial institutions today are starting from a very much on-prem setup and taking on this journey to the cloud. So I think for the vast majority of institutions, it is going to be a hybrid cloud scenario. And I think, at Google Cloud, we think that, that is going to be the future foreseeable for a while. And that's why we invest in hybrid cloud solutions, because I think that's where our customers are going to be. And, what does that mean? When you think about hybrid cloud, what are the tenets of such an infrastructure? I think one, it's an infrastructure that needs to be open. It needs to be open and allow for you to work with a multitude of tools and vendors and APIs that creates this environment where it's easy to use in a very heterogeneous environment. Because, the environments that we live in today are not going to be homogeneous. You're not just going to have one type of database. You're not going to have just one type of data analytics tool. So this openness, I think, is something that we value very highly. And that openness, I think, comes in many flavors. One, obviously support for like open source technologies, and also like making sure that our tools work with each other, and and across the spectrum, that they create this environment where you can seamlessly connect our tools together. And two, we're investing in actual products like Anthos that allows one to run their workloads across, both, our cloud and sometimes in competitors' clouds as well, because we want to give our customers that choice in that hybrid journey. Because I think, at least for a while, the future is going to be a hybrid one. And I think, as institutions are thinking about, their technology landscape, whether that's for infrastructure, applications, functionality, they do need to take into account, their support for this openness and being able to run across, I think, multiple platforms and vendors and capabilities.
Yeah, and I might just add to that, Ulka, if I can. One of our customers, we've got 56 countries worth of data in the platform, and 56 countries is a lot of regulators to knock on the door and get approval for data migrations. And of course, you're never going to get to 100% in the time period that you want to deliver business value. So you do need that hybrid strategy, and we see that as being a really important foundation and one of the great things about the sort of Google Cloud capabilities.
Great points all around. Jamie, I want to dive now into the benefits, specifically around this joint solution between Quantexa and Google Cloud. What can you tell us?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there are some absolutely phenomenal business benefits that are delivered from taking a contextual approach to decision making. I've got a few examples that I'll quickly touch on, which are included in the slide. One of our key joint clients, Quantexa and Google, is using the solution for new customer acquisition and upsell to existing customers. And the numbers here are absolutely staggering. 200 million in new revenue generated within a year, on target to go to $1 billion by 2026. And not only that, it wasn't just about more revenue generation. It was about a more efficient process, a 50% reduction in the amount of time taken to prospect a new prospect. So some really great ones, and that's in the more what I would call the customer intelligence sort of area. Another one, take the anti-money laundering examples. We've got examples where customers have reduced their investigation time by 80%. And these are in large organizations, these can be massive teams, hundreds and hundreds of people, sometimes even thousands. So an 80% reduction is massive. But furthermore, we've got examples where alert volumes in AML we've reduced by 97%, and doing so without losing any of the existing true positives. So this is a huge reduction in the cost of dealing with compliance, whilst actually making the process more efficient and more effective, so finding more financial crime activity. And finally, really good examples as well in fraud. You can see how sort of cross-cutting this is. A tier one insurer saving over 500 million euros a year through applying a contextual based approach to detecting fraud. And we've got another 100 million and more example in trade finance fraud, which was one of the banks that we jointly work with. So some really fantastic examples. But I'd say not only the sort of financial and benefits we're seeing here, there are also wider societal benefits. A lot of our customers use Quantexa and Google to detect and prevent the criminal flow of funds. Our software has been actually used to combat things like money laundering, sex trafficking, and is used by government agencies as well to tackle serious and organized criminal activity. So I suppose we believe that by taking a contextual approach to decision making, we can hopefully not only help our customers, but also help build a better world.
That's fantastic. I love that. That's a great place here to wrap up. I do want to share one more statistic here before we go, and that is that data-driven companies are 23 times more likely to acquire customers. And this is according to a McKinsey report. Amazing statistic. I learned so much on this event today. Ulku and Jamie, thank you so much for being on the event.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And I want to remind everyone out there before you go, make sure you download the trail maps there, which will give you access to a number of joint pieces where you can learn more about the Google Cloud and Quantexa solution. Thank you so much for being on the event, and have a great day. And before we go, I do want to announce the winner of our Visa $300 gift card on the live event here. This is going out to George Baker from Massachusetts. Congratulations to George Baker from Massachusetts. And thank you to everyone in the audience for joining us on the webinar today. Again, one more time, I don't want you to forget about that Google Quantexa trail map that was just recently released. It's right there in the handouts tab. I encourage you to check it out. It's a nicely done resource that covers the key waypoints for banking and financial services, the digital transformation journey to the cloud, some excellent resources, tons of hyperlinks, videos, and ebooks right there in the trail map. So make sure that you check that out in the handouts tab before you leave the webinar today. Again, thanks for joining, and thank you to Google and Quantexa for supporting today's event. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.